What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stochastic DFS channel. And today we're talking College Football DFS, Week 12, the Tuesday Maction slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. They have a first match deposit bonus up to $100 for new users. They're also giving you one free month of Odd Shopper, which is our betting platform, tools for sides, totals, player props, all the major sports, which will help you directly over at Prize Picks, who has all that and more. They have a ton of niche sports, which you can also take advantage of. Link is in the video description below. If you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to play. All right, let's go behind the glass. We got a three-gamer, and it is a little greasy, as it usually is in the MAC, but injuries are going to dominate this slate. So be ready for late news. It's going to be a key part of what we have to do tonight. First game is Toledo Bowling Green, 10-point spread in favor of the road team, Toledo. 51 total here. Toledo's 72nd in pace with a 39% pass rate. Bowling Green is 127th in pace with a 43% pass rate. Right away, DeQuan Finn is somebody I think worth prioritizing on this slate. We have a couple guys in timeshares, a couple guys that just aren't too enticing. DeQuan Finn has 499 rushing yards. He is averaging 201 through the air, and that's on just 24 attempts. So if he's ever coaxed into more competitive games, which this one projects to be, he hasn't been in a close spread in a couple games now. But when he's in these close spreads, you see the ceiling really emerge for DeQuan Finn. He's expensive, but I do think he's a priority, mainly due to lack of alternatives. In the run game, I am trying to play Penny Boone. He had the fumbling problems last game, so you see him out-carried by Jock Stewart. I think that's in part because of the fumbling, in part because of the slaughtering. But he's still averaging 102.5 rushing yards per game. Decent pass game involvement. We've got another 16 yards through the air for Penny Boone. He's completely fine. I think playing Jock Stewart is buying a little high in the recent performance. We just mentioned the game script stuff, the fumbling from Boone, but he still is a change of pace back. So, I mean, you could do worse than play Jock Stewart. Playing them together would be contrarian. Bowling Green has played an easy schedule, so I don't particularly buy this team. Receiving game, you do have expensive price tags on these receivers, and you also have a pass rate below 40%. So Jerwan Newton at 7,100, I think, is a very tough click. Junior Vandeross is a more enticing click, but we're still talking about a guy with only 3 targets in back-to-back games. Larry Stevens, tight end, splits time with Anthony Torres. Then you have Jaden Dotton and Devin Maddox splitting that wide receiver 3 position. It actually makes Toledo a pretty tough team to target in the pass game. So I am okay playing DeQuan Finn completely naked and using these pass catchers as random one-offs. For reference, most recently, Devin Maddox, 57% of the routes, Jaden Dotton, 37%. So I'm still probably just trying to get to Devin Maddox over Jaden Dotton, even with the price differences. I guess for tight ends, because those of you will be curious, 67% Torres, 37% Stevens. I think Torres is the best just pure punt play on this team if you need to get one. Bowling Green, they're rotating Connor Baslick and Camden North. I'm not playing one of these guys. I think the only way I would is if you saw Camden North warming up with the first team in warmups, because he can run. So in the outside chance Camden North gets 100% of the snaps, I would have some interest because of the mobility. But ultimately, he still leaves a lot to be desired as a passer. It's not like the matchup is good, and the team total is still low. So I think fading Bowling Green QBs outright is a pretty wise proposition. In the backfield, Terrion Stewart and Teron Keith are coming in with questionable tags. Okay, let's just do this. If both of them play, I have some interest in Terrion Stewart. The guy had 25, 21, and 15 carries prior to the injury. And Teron Keith's role during that span was pass catching back. Then without Terrion Stewart, Teron Keith had 9 carries, and he retained the pass game role with 9 targets. He leads the team in targets now after that 9-target game last time out. So if both are healthy, I do have more interest in Terrion Stewart. If one of them is out, I like whoever the other one that's in is for sure, whether it's Teron Keith or Terrion Stewart. If both are out, I think Jason Patterson is the best play in this backfield. He's 3,800 coming off 5 carries, played the most snaps of these guys. Payshawn Wimberly was basically a non-factor. You even had Jamal Johnson and Lucian Anderson playing a couple snaps. Lucian Anderson, like he's a sort of a gadget wildcat QB, if you will, but as you can see, being weak at running back has kind of necessitated this. Anyway, all this to say, I think Jayzion Patterson would be the third back we look to if both Terry and Stewart and Teron Keith are out. Late news, but Patterson also would be the avenue to getting like all the studs. Receiving game, Teron Keith leads the team in targets. I mean, that's important. He also leads the team in receiving yards. Otherwise, you have Odu Hilaire, Abdul Fattah Ibrahim, and Austin Osborne as your receivers. Finn Hogan plays a little bit as a situational guy, and Harold Fannin as a tight end. Fannin is fourth on the team in targets. It's pretty narrow between Hilaire, Ibrahim, and him. But of late, he has 12 targets over the last 2 games. That's tied with Teron Keith for the team lead. But before that, he had 5 targets combined in his previous 2 games. So this is a tough situation to parse. I think you're buying high on Fannin for sure if you play him. I personally still prefer going down to Odu Hilaire, who has the very good route rate. I mean, 81% last game. The only person with a better route rate is actually Abdul Fattah Ibrahim, who was at 96%. You look and see Harold Fannin, he was just at 70% of the routes. So targeted, yes. Efficiency, good. But I still think 5,100 for a Bowling Green receiver is quite a bit. I'd rather just save the money with Hilaire and Ibrahim because I don't see there being a large ceiling on any of them. Second game, we go to Western Michigan taking on Northern Illinois, 5-point spread in favor of Northern Illinois. Total's 55, which is the best on this slate. So we definitely want pieces of this game, especially on the Western Michigan side, running that air raid offense, 22nd in pace, 48% pass rate. Northern Illinois is 92nd in pace with a 47.5% pass rate. Hayden Wolf is one of the quarterbacks I want to target in GPPs. It's actually him and Rocky Lombardi. I would rank these guys 2 and 3. Hayden Wolf 2. Lombardi would be 3 for me. Hayden Wolf actually isn't taking as many sacks, which plagued him at Old Dominion. So positive 33 rushing yards. You're no longer at risk of quite as many sacks taken and negative yards. Plus, Northern Illinois' pass rush is almost non-existent, so that shouldn't be a big factor here. As a passer, he's averaging nearly 200 yards per game on 28 attempts. That's depressed because of the stupid timeshare this team was running when they couldn't figure out Hayden Wolf was their best signal caller. That's evaporated, and he's live for a 300-yard bonus, even against a pretty decent Northern Illinois defense. In the run game, basically all Jalen Buckley. I mean, earlier this year, this was the case. Then he got injured for a brief period of time. Now he's back, and he's carried 25 and 24 times in back-to-back games. His route rate has also soared. We're talking about north of 60% in some games. So Buckley, bona fide bell cow, even as a slight underdog, he's worth targeting up at the expensive price range. Zahir Abdus-Salam is just a change of pace at this point, along with CJ Hester. Receiving game, also pretty locked in 3 wide receiver sets. Kenneth Womack has 17 targets in 2 of the last 3 games. And the other game, he has 8 targets. I mean, this guy he should be the most expensive receiver on the slate, but he's not. Play Kenneth Womack. The wide receiver 2 and 3, it's close between Leroy Thomas and Anthony Sambucci. Sambucci up to a 90% route rate. He'd been injured for a stretch of time, so I think he's pretty clearly the 2, and Leroy Thomas the 3. Malik Dudon is the situational 4. They rotate tight ends between Austin Hentz and Blake Bosma. Prior to injury, Hentz had played more, but it looked like they eased him back into action a little bit. I'm kind of just staying away from the tight ends. They're both, I mean, they're cheap enough, but also close enough to Sambucci and Thomas where I'd rather just make them a priority. Northern Illinois, we have Rocky Lombardi under center for his 18th year of college. He's having a terrible year, but he actually has a locked-in starting role, which we can't say about most signal colors on this slate. So I think by default, he ends up being QB3. Not much rushing, 57 yards on the ground. He can rush, he just doesn't. Volume is really bad, 27 attempts per game for 180 yards. That's really the difference between Hayden Wolf and Lombardi for me, not to mention Lombardi's 100 more, laughably. But they are favored, so I guess that's worth something. In the receiving game, he's very easy to stack. Kasper Ruchkiewicz hasn't played in 4 straight games, so it's Trayvon Rudolph, and then it's everyone else. He's averaging 8.8 targets per game over the last 4. So I think he's very clearly a priority. I love using him and Womack in the same game. The wide receiver 2 is Jalen Johnson, 81% of the routes. And then their 3 is a rotation. You see Davis Patterson. Last game, he was at 23% of the routes, which is a surprise. Dane Partridge popped up for 55% of the routes. They also used a fair amount of 12 personnel. Grayson Barnes, their main tight end, had a 77% route rate. Then you had Brock Lamp. He was at 32%. Tristan Tews played a fair amount as well. So to rank these pass catchers, it's Trayvon Rudolph very clearly 1. I'll go Jalen Johnson 2. And then honestly, I think Dane Partridge over Davis Patterson because of the price is where I'm going to go for 3, followed by Grayson Barnes 4. In the run game, just very clear roles for Antario Brown and Gavin Williams. Antario Brown, the early down back. He has carry counts of 12, 10, 22, and 18. You can pretty clearly see the positive game script. Those are the last 4 games, 91.5 yards per game. But he doesn't do a lot as a receiver, 5 yards per game there. Gavin Williams plays a lot, doesn't get a lot of carries, but he's definitely the team's preferred pass down back. He's at least 3 targets in 4 straight games. Still too expensive, but ultimately he limits Antario Brown enough where I prefer finding the salary to get to Penny Boone. I prefer finding the salary to get to Jalen Buckley. Antario Brown is in that next tier backs for me with like whatever Bowling Green back is healthy. He's in that range. Final game, Akron, Eastern Michigan. 4-point spread in favor of Eastern Michigan. The total's 39, worse on the board. Akron is a disaster. They lost Irons for the year. Their starting quarterback. They're 70th in pace with a 58% pass rate. Jeff Undercuffler got banged up in their last game briefly. Honestly, you could probably see Taj Bullock at any point in time. They've already started Taj Bullock. I don't know who they start at quarterback here, if they play the whole game. The Akron situation's a mess. And Undercuffler has 163 negative yards. Just can't play him. Excuse me. In the backfield, Lorenzo Lingard got hurt on like the final play of the game, which is nuts because he's handled like 95% of the running back touches. In non-competitive games, this is like 10 to 12 touches. Maybe with pass game work, you'll get close to 15. Actually, you know what? Just to go over his touch count last 4 games, 16 touches, 15 touches, 24 touches, and 16 touches. So even in negative game script, it's pretty good for Lingard. If he's out, I think you mostly see Drake Anderson, the Arizona transfer, but they use Charles Kellum a bit as well. It could be a timeshare to some degree. Not sure how much they would give Drake Anderson's way. Receiving game, Daniel George and Josiah Gathings are very clearly the top 2 guys. Average 7.9 and 7.3 targets per game, and that's also narrowed considerably. George is at 11.5 targets per game over the last 4. Gathings is at 8, but he's also had target counts of 14 and 11 over the last 2. Wide receiver 3, Alex Adams, did not play in their last game due to injury. So they morphed their offense a little bit. You saw Bobby Golden with a 45% route rate for him. Miles Walker was at 47%. Even guys like Adrian Norton, 20%. Caleb Anderson, 6%. They still rotate tight ends, which isn't ideal. TJ Banks has been around 45% of the routes. Jake Newell, 30 to 35% game in, game out. So honestly, I'm just trying to find the salary to get to George and Gathings. They're not expensive, so this shouldn't be hard. And then all the rotation beyond that makes it pretty difficult to get to. Eastern Michigan, Austin Smith has been playing most of the snaps. I think he's at risk of a benching at any point. We've already seen Ike Udengwu at multiple points this season. But Smith has some positive rushing, 121 yards there. Just horrific efficiency. 142 pass yards per game is downright putrid. Again, this offense is 97th in pace with a 48.5% pass rate. They also use a pure backfield by committee. Samson Evans and Jalen Jackson, it's 50-50. It ebbs and flows week in, week out. So I guess you could throw some darts on these guys, but I'd rather just play whoever pops, I guess, in the injury situations. You know, Akron and Bowling Green, you might get some cheaper value just because of the injuries. I'd rather find that than try to play one of these Eastern guys. In the receiving game, they throw a fair amount. Tanner New has pretty good volume. Just the efficiency is so bad with Austin Smith. I still think 4,800 is a favorable price tag. 7.6 targets per game this year for Tanner New. He's not expensive. JB Mitchell, Hamza El-Zayat are the 2 and the 3 very clearly. Tight end is about a 4-way rotation. But I think you can sprinkle JB Mitchell, Hamza El-Zayat, and Tanner New for sure in these lineups. These are guys I definitely like. That'll do it for us today. Let me know in the comments what you think of this video. If you have a question, you can reach out to me on Twitter at @Matt_Gajewski. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow for more action. Until then, good luck, everyone. We'll see you next time.